Hello, everyone. This is Kops Office Hours. It is May 25th, 2018. We have a couple of things on the agenda. There is a question about whether, well, I'll start with a quick just announcement of I've been a bit MIA for the past, I guess, 2 weeks in particular, working on etcd Manager, which is sort of the thing that will get everyone from etcd 2 to etcd 3 and also give us all sorts of like minor upgrades and cluster resizes and all those sort of things, which are really important for the sort of health of Kops, and that is finally working as in works for me. So we can, the goal for the next Kops release was to get it as an sort of early access opt-in option, and so that is now going to be, that's now a reasonable thing to do, and we can get it under EDE testing. And so I will also be reviewing everyone's PR backlog, or the PR backlog from everyone. Thank you for all the PRs. And then I don't know if there's any questions on that, but otherwise we'll go on to the first real item on the agenda, which is, does Kops use Terraform? That's a question we had in chat, thank you. So the answer to that is, Kops itself doesn't have to use Terraform. Kops has its own model that is sort of similar to Terraform's model, and there are 3 ways that Kops can execute the Kops model. One of which is it can execute that model directly. It can directly create autoscaling groups and all the other objects, but configure autoscaling groups, reconfigure them, delete them. The other model is it can export to Terraform, and the third model is it can export to CloudFormation. Those are the 3 options on AWS. Different clouds have different options. Most people, I think, use either the Terraform model or the built-in model. The built-in model is sort of easier to work with. It's sort of, if you just want to create a cluster as quickly as you can, that's a great way to get going. A lot of people use the Terraform model, I think, for 2 main reasons, and I'm sure people can add others, but they use it to basically to audit the changes that are going to be made. So Kops gives you a preview of what's going to happen, but it isn't really the sort of thing that you can really rely on for auditing or show to, a dedicated ops team. And so they will generate Terraform and sort of review the changes in detail that way. Probably check it into Git at the same time so that you can have a sort of change log. And then the other way is to make changes to the Terraform, which we don't really recommend, or to integrate it into like a bigger system. So, for example, we export. You can have Kops export a Terraform settings or Terraform set of resources. Use that as a Terraform module, and that Terraform module will export, for example, the subnet IDs and I think the security groups and the VPC ID. And the intention being that then you could reference those and create an RDS database or VPC interconnects or whatever you want to do. In theory, we've exposed enough variables, and we're happy to expose more variables, but we've exposed enough variables that you can use it as a module, treat Kops or your Kubernetes cluster as a module in your bigger Terraform configuration. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a big
yes, thank you very much for answer. And I saw description in documentation that Kops can generate the YAML configuration file for Terraform. But you said there is a model similar to Terraform. Can you write in the chat the name of this model, or where can I look into the code in GitHub?
Yeah, so it is an internal model, and it's not really, it's in the code, and it's called the path, or sort of FI or tasks. I will paste the link to that. And then
you essentially have everything defined through a cluster specification, which is like a YAML-based definition for your cluster.
I think someone else was also making a comment. I don't know if that was. I don't know. But let's see, so in the code there is a let's do, for example, security groups are fairly simple.
Yeah, well, Justin's looking that up. The other thing that that we do is I didn't want to have to export the Terraform code every single time, so we use Kops and the Kops model to deploy everything. And then within Terraform, we use data objects to reference everything. And so we just do a whole data object build. That's one other way that's worked really well for us, so that we can still move fast with, you know, the Kops way, but also Terraform for everything else we need on top of it.
Is that using like the remote state, the remote state? Is that?
We didn't use the remote state stuff, but the data objects that they have now, you can basically like
you can like suck in a value.
Yeah, so I key off the name of the VPC, and so then I just create a workspace for every VPC, and you know, then you can get all the subnets and everything based on that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I've spent a lot of like the last 6 months in Terraform land, so I have sort of a vested interest in and a little bit more insight into how you might use Terraform and Kops together now, which I definitely did not appreciate before.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. I also learned something today. That's great. And I'm just going to paste, and then that is used in the model here. Are there any other discussion topics? Anyway, so yeah, I pasted in. So we have like a task that is the lowest level that manages, for example, one AWS resource, like an internet gateway. And then we have a model or a package called model, which essentially transforms the Kops API objects into our individual tasks. And we do that all in code. We originally did that using like Go templates, and it proved to be less good than just using code, like much more complicated and much harder to, much easier to introduce bugs and it didn't really actually gain us a whole lot of benefit in terms of being able to tweak it easily. So that's where we are.
I have another topic. So the cluster autoscaler has an option for auto discovery for instance groups, and you need to add like 2 annotations or 2 tags to the autoscaling group. What would be the best way to do that? Should we add another option to the instance group spec for that, or is that like?
You can actually just do that with cloud labels right now. I think that's what we do.
Yeah, you can. I've used that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the other option would be, I mean, so the two options are the 3 options, I guess, like tell users to add them in cloud labels manually, have a field or something that lets you turn them on and off automatically, and the third option would be to just add them for everyone because we think it's generally useful. I don't know how people would feel, whether anyone would object to like having those annotations automatically.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to do it automatically, but because like the cluster autoscaler is an add-on, it's not like one of the things installed by Kops itself.
Right. And then I think we are. I mean, there's the machines API, which is the cluster API machines API, which is coming, which will. Well, what it will do is it will expose what happened is all the installation tools have a concept similar to Kops instance groups. They call them something different. So I think GKE calls them node pools, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And the idea is that the autoscaler is a good example of a tool that wants to integrate with those node pools or instance groups. And so we're going to have the cluster API is building something called a machine deployment, which will manage machines in the Kubernetes API. And so you will have Kops instance groups will show up as machine deployments in some way. And then the autoscaler will work directly against machine deployments. And we won't need, so currently the autoscaler has to use those tags because otherwise it has no way of knowing, it doesn't have enough information to discover which autoscaling groups correspond to what. But the machine deployment will effectively have that information in it. So I guess this is timeline on that, probably 6 months to a year, I would guess. I'm not entirely sure. Probably less to get machines integrated and more to get the full like cluster support, but that sort of timeline. So that would suggest that we don't necessarily want to build in, a ton of machinery. I don't know, Seth. Maybe if do we have docs on exactly what is on the annotations that are needed? That's a great first step. And then we can see like how bad it would be to, well, how much work it is and whether it's worth having a field to automate it or not.
Yeah, it's two annotations. One is like Kate's IO cluster autoscaler auto detect or something, or
I threw it in chat there.
enabled. Yeah.
Enabled is true, and then you have to put another one with your cluster name.
Does
Yeah.
it have to be true, the value, or can it be shared? Or
I think it's actually yes. It has to be yes.
Oh, well, true works for us.
Okay.
Oops.
The enable, the second, so the autoscaler enabled, if that's the only one that's needed, right? I feel like that one, we could just say, just add that one. Like we're just gonna have a field. I don't really see a huge benefit there. The cluster one is trickier because that's, I think that's our cluster format, right? And we use shared and owned. We don't use true. So hopefully that's not actually.
It might not need to be true. It's just what I set up years ago. So I don't know. It still works for us. So.
Okay. I think we should probably add that second annotation automatically, in which case we might already be doing so in fact. In which case it's just the autoscaler enabled true. So I would say it's probably a docs thing. If it's just gonna be, if indeed we are left with one and it is as simple as that, then I would say maybe a docs thing. I guess what we could do is we could have it at the cluster level. I
don't see that annotation on the autoscaling group. I see there's a Kubernetes cluster key with the cluster name as the value, but I don't see one that's in the form of like that annotation.
Okay. It may be, we definitely added more of them, I think, to subnets and things like that. And I think eventually we're going to roll them out across everything, but it may not have rolled yet, or it may not be done yet. It just seems like we're adding it to more and more, and I can just see that every single one is going to end up with that annotation. And so, how about docs first, and then we can figure out whether it's worth doing a field. My wariness being that the time that we're going to keep this for is sort of bounded, right? In that. Well, I guess that a machine deployment in future would have one option. Here's another option. We have the min and max size, right? We could set those annotations automatically if those min and max are different, but I don't know whether other people are using different mechanisms there. So,
yeah, I mean, if Cloud Labels works, I'll just do that. That's the easiest way to go.
I think Cloud Labels is a great way to go. It seems like everyone does that. And then if people are unhappy about it, particularly in future, when we actually get closer to the machine deployments and can see a little bit more about how that's going to work, then we can revisit. But yeah, if you want to do I think the first step would be docs. I don't know if this is actually in the docs.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the docs. I think the docs for this would be in the add-ons, and the examples there are all where you're manually setting each instance group.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely thinking more about add-ons, and so this could be another one for me to think more about. But yeah, I don't have a great answer, and it seems like everyone today is happily setting Cloud Labels, and that is not a terrible answer, I think. And there was another question about, is it safe to use Kops in production? What key points we need to pay attention to? I think the general answer is it is safe-ish. I think the areas of concern are don't in general in Kubernetes allow untrusted users to access your cluster. And then it's about how much trust do you want to give them. So for example, by default, we don't lock down access to the IAM to the AWS metadata service, which gives you access to the IAM token for the nodes. And that token is now gives you much fewer permissions than it used to give you, but still enough permissions to cause trouble at least. And the master token has obviously very high permissions, but it's harder to get to. So, if you're talking about running we believe it to be safe against external users. So people outside your cluster. Once you give users access to your cluster, you are basically trusting them. And for example, we don't set up an authentication system by default, which is so everyone effectively, the sort of default configuration is everyone becomes an admin, and there's no easy way to revoke that permission. So that's why things like the Heptio Authenticator add-on are so important, because it's an easier way to give people permissions that are more revocable, as I understand it. I don't know if one of the people working on the Heptio or enabling the Heptio Authenticator want to talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I did. So it's mostly set up. It's already there. It's great if you have IAM roles set up already. It pretty much works. This only does part of the work for you. It only sets up a key and actually gets a Heptio Authenticator running on the Kops cluster. You still have to manage all your IAM roles manually and whatnot. But yeah.
But yeah, so those are the big areas of. I mean, definitely, it's supposed to be safe for running against. Like, we're not going to open the API server to the world, but once you let a user onto your cluster, then you likely have to trust them. And I wouldn't, for example, run a public Kops cluster where anyone can like come and run jobs on your cluster. Like, don't run Travis. Don't rewrite Travis, like Travis CI or a CI system that is public and running untrusted code.
Without the authenticator, you can actually give certain users certain level of permission. So like you can let users create namespaces or not, only create pods, create services. So you can give the users those levels of permissions as well. So that might be helpful depending on what you're trying to do. But yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I believe it's if you're. So I think the answer is if you all the things in Kubernetes are probably now there to enable you to do something like an untrusted CI environment, but certainly it's not out of the box in Kops, and I don't know whether it's out of the box in any configuration now that is provided by anyone. So think very carefully about trusting your team. But there we are.
And I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of people on this call that run it in prod. So
yes. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, bring up the agenda. I don't know if anyone else has put anything else on the agenda.
I actually did. It's mostly about the IAM roles. We talked about this last time. We discovered that IAM roles was actually working pretty well, but there's a issue with the life cycles as well. We said that we could actually merge the IAM roles diff, and that we'd have to fix the life cycles, but that never got done. I'm just not sure if we're still okay with that, or if there's any other issues we discovered around it.
Okay, I will. Yeah, that's my fault. I'm sorry. I will.
No worries.
Yes, there was an issue around one of the lifecycle exists. We're verifying something. One of those ones not working as we expected it to. But yes, I will get to that. I am working through my the excellent PR dashboard in Kubernetes. I'll put a link. There's a Kubernetes. What is it called? Kubernetes PR dashboard, which shows you all like your PRs. Which is quite nice.
Let me guess, you have all of them.
I have one or two of them, yeah.
Well, also feel free. I haven't been around as much in the past few months, but I'm back, and feel free to tag me if you need somebody to take a look at something. I have some bandwidth. So
awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Eric. Otherwise, the thing that I'm mostly thinking about personally is thinking about how we do add-ons and things like that. And well, apart from enabling etcd manager, that feels like that's now at the sort of fixing bugs type stage, I hope. And so now the next thing on my personal roadmap is enabling add-ons, and then later we'll be thinking about machine deployments and the machines API.
When you say add-ons, does that mean like add-ons that will be like automatically updated?
That is an excellent and very difficult question. It certainly means we have a set of things in Kops that are managed by Kops, like all the CNI network providers, and it would be nice to reference them outside of the Kops. So right now, when we have a new version of Calico, we have to release a new version of Kops to get the new manifest, and that is not a great situation. The hope is that whatever system we use for managing things like Calico, we can also use generally for things like the AWS encryption provider, for things like the cluster autoscaler, so that there's no, like cluster autoscaler today, you install it and it's sort of different from Kops. It would be nice if they were all sort of the same experience. So thinking about that and trying to understand how to do that. If anyone has any great ideas, feel free to ping me on Slack. Thinking about what CoreOS calls the operator pattern, where where you'd have an operator for certainly the bigger ones, and whether it makes sense to have an operator for everything. So effectively, Kops would be an operator. Kops would almost be an operator that coordinates other operators, rather than having Kops understand how to install Calico and Weave and all those things. It would say, go install the Calico operator type thing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but we also, we don't necessarily want to have a million operators, and it's unclear whether it actually solves all the problems, but that's sort of what I'm grappling with. Awesome. Well, if that is all we have, I wish everyone a very happy weekend, particularly if you have a longer weekend due to the US holidays.
Likewise. Have a good one, guys.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.